Okay, so for each one of our factoring problems, the very first thing we need to do is we need to see what we can undistribute, which is what we were doing before. So if I look at number 1, what can I undistribute from here? I can undistribute not just n, but what? N squared. Right? So, n squared times what gives me n to the third? N. And n squared times what gives me negative 8n squared? Negative 8, right? I just undistributed that. Now, if what's left in there is just a plain old n, not an n squared, or an x squared, or whatever, I'm done. That's like what we were doing before. Okay? Does that make sense? Are there any other problems on this page that you think are just like that? 5. What can I take out in 5? And what's left inside? N plus 6, right? Okay, that guy's done. Any others you see that might be like that? 7. What can I take out in number 7? An X and a 2. What would be left inside then? 2x times what is 2x squared? X. 2x times what is negative 14x? Negative 7. Okay. And I think that covers all of them. All of those just had 2 terms. Those were super easy, right? Just review from what we were doing before. Now we get to the ones that I like. This doesn't have 2 terms, does it? It has 3 terms. 1, 2, 3. Do all 3 terms have anything in common? Nope. So we use our snowflake. You ready for the snowflake? It's life-changing. Seriously. Okay, so here's what my snowflake looks like. That's my snowflake. It's totally chill.
That was a good one.
Okay. Got it? It's an X with a line through the middle like a belt. On the top of my snowflake, now let me step back for a minute. When we have these 3 terms, it's called a trinomial because there's 3 terms. And that term, or it's always in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Now you may have heard of that once upon a time when you did something called the quadratic formula, and it was, there's a little song, x equals negative b plus or minus squared. Okay, we'll learn that later. Anyways, a is what's in front of the x squared, b is what's in front of the x, and c is called our constant. He's out there on the end all by himself. Okay, so in this particular equation, what would you say a is? It's what's in front of the x squared. So in this case, it would be 1. Nothing's written there, so it's a 1. What would you say b is? 17. And c is 70. So here's how the snowflake works. On the top of the snowflake, you are going to put a times c. So 1 times 70 is 70. On the bottom of your snowflake, you are going to put b, which is 17. Now comes the hardest step of the snowflake. I need to find 2 numbers that multiply to get 70 and add to get 17. Add to get 17, multiply to get 70. 10 and 7, because 10 times 7 is 70, and 10 plus 7 is 17. There we go. There's our 2 numbers. Okay? That's the hardest part of it because you may need to guess and check a couple different pairs of numbers before you come up with it. Okay? Sometimes it'll be real obvious. Sometimes you'll have to guess a little bit. All right. Next thing I need to do, on the top here, I write my a value, which is 1 in this case. on the top in both places. And then I'm going to take this x squared and I'm going to split it up, putting one of the x's on the left and one of the x's on the right. Okay? You okay so far? I have all the information I need to get my answer. This right here, you want to look at it like it's a fraction. 1x over 10. Can that be reduced at all? No. What about this one? Can it be reduced? No. So what those two fractions end up being is my parentheses. 1x over 10, I would call that 1x plus 10. And 1x over 7, I would call that x plus 7. Those are my two parentheses that if I were to multiply them out would get me that guy right there. I'll prove it to you. X times x is x squared plus 7x plus 10x plus 70. And if I combine my like terms, x squared plus 17x plus 70, that was the original problem, so my answer is correct. Okay? We are just going to practice that snowflake over and over and over again.
That's it. That's it.
That's the snowflake. Okay? Now, let's look at, let's see, is there another one that's easy? Let's do number 3. Number 3 is not too bad. But again, you always want to check for that GCF first. Can you take anything out first? Because 252 is kind of a big number. I don't really want to see 252 in my snowflake. Can I take something out? Is 252 divisible by 4?
Yes.
Let's see. 252 divided by 4. It is. So I can take out a 4, can't I?
Yeah, maybe.
So if I take out 4, what's left inside? N squared plus 2n minus 63, right? Now I'm going to use my snowflake on that guy. What's my A value? Don't count the 4 because he's outside the parentheses. So my A value is 1. What's my B value?
63.
Careful. 2. And my C value? Negative 63. So let's look at our snowflake. What goes on the top? A times C. So 1 times negative 63 is negative 63. On the bottom, I put 2. Now comes the tricky part. I need two numbers that multiply to get negative 63, but add to get positive 2. 63 divided by 2 and 31, that's not going to help me. How about 63 divided by 3 and 21? Not going to get 2, is it? 63 divided by, it's not going to divide by 9, is it? 8? Nope. 7?
Yeah, 7.
Ooh, 7 and 9. Those are 2 apart, right? So I think my two numbers are 7 and 9. Now I have to think about positives and negatives for a minute because this one has a negative in it. The other one didn't. They need to multiply to get negative 63, which means one of them has to be negative, right? Because if both of them were negative, they would multiply to get positive 63. So if they have to add to get a positive 2, which one has to be negative?
7.
The 7. What would happen if I made the 9 negative instead? They would add to negative 2. So I can't do that one. It has to be the 7. How do I fill up the top? I put my 1, and then I take my n squared, and I split it up to n and n. Can I reduce this? Can I reduce this? Okay, so one of my parentheses is 1n. This is a negative 7, so it's going to be minus 7. And what's my other parentheses? N plus 9. Now I can't forget that in the very first step, what did I do? I took out that 4. He's still got to be there. So? It won't be terrible for long. You'll get good at it, I promise. If you can master this, it'll make the next few chapters a lot easier. Okay. All right, number 4, what can I take out?
A 2.
A 2, what else? An x. What's left inside? X squared minus x minus 42. Okay. What's my a value? 1. B. Today a is always 1. B is -1. And what is C? -42. I already have 2 numbers in my head. Do you? What are the 2 most common numbers that multiply to get 42? 6 and 7? I think we might have a winner there. All right, 1 times -42 is -42. -1 on the bottom. 6 and 7 works, doesn't it? Which one has to be negative if they're going to add to get -1? The 7 has to be negative. On the top, I don't really need to be putting the 1 every time, right? Because we just drop it off anyways. So I'm going to split up that x squared, put x and x. So there's one parentheses, there's the other. I can't forget the fact that in the first step I took out a 2x. So I have 2x and then I have what? X plus 6 and x minus 7. Now, Mrs. Franken, I put my 7 and my 6 in the opposite order, so I ended up with x minus 7 first and then x plus 6. That's totally fine. As long as you have the same parentheses as me, it doesn't matter what order you write them in. Okay? Make sense? Do I have time? Yes, I have time. Let's do another one. They don't get any harder. This is just where it's at, so we're just going to live right here for a little bit until this becomes easy. What can I take out here? What can I take out? Anything? N. What's left inside? N squared plus 5n minus 24. You try the snowflake on this one. I'll help you set it up. But I want you to try and finish it. So 1 times -24, and then 5. You go from there. See if you can come up with your 2 numbers, and then set up what your parentheses will look like. All right, you want to see me finish this one? What are my 2 numbers? 8 and 3, and the 3 has to be negative. I put my n there and my n there, so I have n plus 8, n minus 3, and that n out in front. All right, homework's coming around. Don't forget it. Happy studying.